Hello everyone and welcome to the NPTEL course in Pharmacognosy and Phytochemistry. We are doing resin containing drugs, and in this session we are going to learn about two resins which are used commercially and for recreational purpose, and those resin containing drugs are cannabis and guaiacum resin. Now cannabis. What is cannabis? So cannabis, you heard numerous things about cannabis. It's used as a recreational drug. It is good, it is bad. There are numerous countries wanting to make this drug legal, and some say that it is better off illegal because of its what is called as addiction effects. Now here, since it's an addicting drug and it's also therapeutically beneficial, let's learn little bit about this drug and let's try to understand why there is a debate here. Now cannabis basically consists of dried leaves as well as flowering tops of two plants. Now cannabis has numerous species, of which two which are used very much for commerce and for recreational purpose are cannabis sativa, which is thought to be the main plant and from which other cannabis hybrids or varieties have been prepared, and the other one is cannabis indica. Now they belong to the family Cannabinaceae. Now if you see cannabis, there are numerous type of cultivated varieties or often referred to as cultivars. So what are these cultivars? Now cannabis was known as initially a drug which was used for preparation of fibers. If you see your hemp, you get numerous products in market which are made up of hemp. Say for example your hemp jeans, that is your traditional Levi's jeans, was thought to be made up of hemp because of its breathability and durability and also resistance to fungal growth. And this hemp fibers are very lightweight, very durable, so they were more lasting for the farmers, and as a result the fibers of this cannabis plant were used in making your jeans traditionally in America. Now because of the durability of this fibers, they found application in your currency notes, they found application in numerous other things like your filter pads and so on. Now while dealing with the drugs, one disadvantage is cannabis, the plants when they were cultivated or during the process of their harvesting, they often yielded a resin, a sticky residue which gave you a hallucinogen like activity. From there on, cannabis also became a habit forming recreational drug. So then what the cultivars did, or what the government did, is they kind of modified this plant, and during the process of modification you would see that the habit forming activity of this plant is considered to be due to a compound called as delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or often referred to as THC. So if you see the THC content, on an average the THC content is between 0.2 to 0.3. So for a cultivar wherein the THC content went below that, because of genetic modification the resin yield was decreased, it was no longer habit forming, and this type of cultivar was referred to as fiber type. Another cultivar which was kind of prized and kept only for its hallucinogen like activity and is often referred to as your drug type cultivar. In the drug type cultivar you will see that the THC, that is the concentration of delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, goes from above 0.2 to 0.3% and generally considered to be above 0.3%. Now this plant, for its purpose, that is for getting fibers as well as for getting drugs, have been cultivated extensively in US. Not only in US, it's been cultivated in Central America Africa, especially the East and South Africa, and in Asia in countries such as India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, as well as in Iran. Now, if you see this cannabis plant very particularly in terms of its drug-like effects, the drug-like effect comes from a resin, and this resin is actually secreted from a tiny hair-like structures which are present, referred to as trichomes. So cannabis bears two type of trichomes or two classes of trichomes, one which are called as covering trichomes. The covering trichomes are more hair-like. The next one which actually secrete the resin are glandular trichomes. So the hair-like trichome do one function, and that function is to protect it from insects. So they form coverings on the stalks and on the leaves, especially near the venations. Whereas if you see the flowering tops are more secretory in nature, and at those regions you will find glandular trichomes. Now glandular trichomes in cannabis are also of two types. So if you see the glandular trichomes, you will see the ones with stalk. Okay, now this stalk can be a multiseriate, that means lines of multiple cells forming multiple rows. So you have multiseriate stalk, and then they call it as a octacellular head. So somewhere you have your 8 compartments done, and this is your octacellular head. So this one, which is called as the capitate or headed stalk like a trichome, gives you a majority of the resin, and then little extent is given by what is called as your sessile glandular. Now sessile glandular is just the head, there is no stalk, that's the reason it is called as sessile glandular, whereas the hair-like structures are just kind of multicellular covering, and that will prevent the insects from sitting on the plant. So you have this two, that is the capitate one with the stalk and the sessile one. These two type of trichomes are responsible for secreting resins in the cannabis plant. Now based on this, numerous products of cannabis you find in your market. Now the one of the rich product or cannabis or resin rich product you find in market is ganja. Now ganja basically refers to the resinous tops, generally the flowering tops, mostly the topmost portion twigs of unfertilized plants. In preference, the female plants are more preferred here. What is done is they are rolled. In ganja also you get two type of ganja, to be more specific, in the Indian subcontinent. The Bombay ganja, which is generally the pressed twigs, so the twigs are collected and they are pressed, and the Bengal ganja, which is more of a twig which is rolled in the hands. So you get two types of this ganja, and this ganja are kind of sold for recreational purposes. Now when you take the other example of your cannabis product is bhang. Now bhang generally you get during the festivities, especially during the holy season. What is done is both the twigs, that is the new part or fresh part of the male as well as female plants, is taken, collected, and because it is a mixture of male and female plants, you will see the female plants yield more resin. When you mix it with male plants, the resin is diluted and doesn't have as strong effect as your ganja. So bhang does have what is called as the recreational effect, but it is much lesser as compared to your ganja. So this bhang is often taken in or co-administered, diluted in your buttermilk. So what happens in your buttermilk is, you know that buttermilk is a lipophilic solution, or what you call it as an emulsion, to be more precise. So this bhang, the cannabinoids, whatever are there, when you triturate it with your buttermilk, the kind of compounds get dispersed in your buttermilk, and when you consume them, they become more bioavailable. So in a way, we try to still get what maximum you can from the plant parts which are obtained. The next product which you get from cannabis in market is referred to as charas or hash or hashish. Now there is some little difference difference, but most of the words are used synonymously. Now what is done in case of charas is, we know that the flowering tops of your cannabis contains your resin. So this workers pluck those flowering tops and often rub it in their hands. So as a result of rubbing, what happens is whatever resin is being secreted is kind of stick, or this resin sticks to your hand. Now this resin, when you scrape it up, it will contain exclusively your resin and very little of plant parts. The only plant part which comes in the way is little pieces of your trichomes, which get separated during the rubbing action, and little pieces of stalk or very tiny leaflet that may be there. Now what is done is, this is rubbed sometimes just to for the hygiene purpose and to get good yield. Instead of doing it with bare hands, people take cloth, wrap your female flowering tops in the cloth and then rub it. As a result, because of its adsorbent effect, the resin gets stuck to the cloth. The flowering part is then removed, and whatever is attached to the cloth is kind of scraped and then converted or filled into a small square shaped box. This square shaped box is then kind of filled, pressed, and then sold in market as your hashish cubes. Now if you go to the American side, you see a recreational drug often referred to as weed or marijuana. This is nothing but same. It's your cannabis sativa. Now what is done is, the whole drug is taken very similar to your ganja. It's picked up, it's kind of mixed, dried, and given as a mixture, as a press. Now this can be then smoked or consumed as such, but people generally prefer smoking weed or marijuana. The reason is, if you smoke the weed, the bioavailability of your cannabinoids, the principle what we saw is your THC. The THC starts showing its action very immediately in about 15 to 30 minutes time. But whereas if you consume it orally, by the time it goes into your digestive system, thereon to your blood and thereon to your CNS, it takes more than an hour. So people who want the immediate gratification, as you may say, or immediate high of consuming the weed, in that case they prefer smoking the weed over consuming it. Now coming to a little safer options here, the safer option is hemp. Like I said, this is the genetically modified cannabis plant in which the resin content has been decreased to less than 0.2, and as a result it has very low level of psychoactive substances and considered safe for consumption. Now that is safe for consumption, you can prepare products from that. One good product from that which comes out is hemp oil. Now hemp oil, or often referred to as your cannabidiol, the reason being, when the resin content is being decreased, more focus had been given on your THC. So as a result, the THC content comes really low, and what is more active in hemp oil is your CBD, often referred to as your cannabidiol. So your hemp oil or the hemp extract, which is prepared from the by extracting your cannabis with organic solvents and then evaporating it, that residue, often referred to as industrial hemp, is more rich in CBD than your THC. Now the hemp seed oil actually comes from the seed. So after flowering tops mature, you get a seed. The seeds are then pressed and to get what is called as hemp oil. Hemp oil is a very good quality thin oil which you can use for other purposes, but it contains absolutely few or no cannabinoids. So it doesn't have that addictive property and doesn't give you a CNS stimulatory or hallucinogenic effects. Now coming to your chemical composition, what exactly is the chemical composition? The cannabis, the resinous compounds are obtained by condensation. So you can see that your cannabinoids make up almost 15 to 20% of the resin, and about 140 such cannabinoid compounds have been found in your cannabis, and principally of them are your THC and CBD. So if you carefully see this THC and CBD, what happens is if you cleave it here and then you start compensating this double bond here, so you get a double bond right here, and this O is getting converted into OH. So nothing but your THC gets broken up and exposed to form what is called as cannabidiol. But in the process, you will see that THC is much more potent as compared to your cannabidiol. So the net effects of the resin decreases when your THC content decreases. So in addition to that, you also have what is called as tetrahydrocannabinolic acid. Then you have your tetrahydrocannabivarin. Then you have your cannabidiolic acid, and cannabidiol or cannabinol is also present, but it is present to certain extent in aged plants, or even after harvesting. If you keep it for more time, you can see more amount of this cannabinols coming in. Now in addition to that, you also have your volatile oil, trigonelline, little amount of choline. The main psychoactive effect definitely is attributed to the presence of 9-THC. Now where do you apply this? Now cannabis is applied for medicinal as well as recreational purposes. Now cannabis, especially your THC, works on cannabinoid receptors, especially your receptors, cannabinoid receptors 1 and 2. Now if you see here, it predominantly acts on your receptor 1, and that causes much of your CNS effects. Whereas if you see your cannabidiol, it acts on your cannabinoid receptors 1 and 2 and has more other effects also, and that's the reason cannabidiol or CBD is more preferred, where you want less of CNS effects but you want more of other effects. Especially if a patient is in pain, you want like a pain relieving effects. You want to reduce inflammation or decrease anxiety even without having those addictive or high kind of effects or CNS stimulatory effects. In that cases, your cannabidiol is more preferred. If you say THC gives you more of euphoria and hallucinogenic effect. Now if you consume cannabis or marijuana as such, it is said that you cannot just pinpoint your THC or CBD. The effects are more than your THC and CBD put together, for the reason being there are more of other compounds which are present, definitely, which are your cannabinoid derivatives as well as others, volatiles. Now this total compounds give you what is called as an entourage effect. So a mixed reaction, or what you refer to as your synergistic effect. Now this synergistic effects can be felt not only on your CNS but also on your immune system. Now CBD is also been advocated. So if you see, we said that you can genetically modify cannabis. Now with genetically modified cannabis, your resin content is slightly decreased, especially your THC content is decreased. Now that the THC content is decreased and you have more of your CBD remaining there. Now CBD, because it has sedative relaxant effect, it is said that you could therapeutically start using that. Even traditionally, your cannabis had some applications for treatment of CNS disorders. So people are somewhere trying to prove that if you give it in a low dosage, if you balance your THC and CBD concentration, it can be a very good therapeutic compound for your CNS disorders. In addition to that, now cannabis can also be beneficial for people, those who are on cancer therapy, especially chemotherapy. It is seen that with more and more your chemotherapeutic doses, the appetite is often suppressed and people feel more and more nauseous. Now because cannabis being a recreational drug, it is said that you can give cannabis to such patients. What will happen is, because they now dissociate with the pain, the pain is no longer allayed to that chemotherapy. They are found, or they were found to have a better appetite. So cannabis was proven to stimulate appetite and relieve nausea in such patients. So in that way you can advocate its beneficial effects, but definitely it has more of addictive effects, and that is the reason we have to weigh the pros and the cons of this drug judicially before making it legal. Now we go on to a next resin drug, and the next resin drug is a guaiacum resin. Now guaiacum is a very beautiful plant, which is your Guaiacum officinale, and guaiacum is a resin which is obtained from heartwood, chiefly of Guaiacum officinale as well as Guaiacum sanctum. Now these are Zygophyllaceae family members of often found in South American subcontinent, and generally tropically grown with a very beautiful flowers, as you can see here in the image. Now if you're talking about Guaiacum officinalis or Guaiacum officinale, it is more found towards the coast of Venezuela, Colombia and West Indies. Whereas when you say Guaiacum sanctum, the Guaiacum sanctum is more native to your Cuban, Haiti, Bahamas and your Florida. Now this guaiacum resin is secreted throughout the wood, but if you compare, the heartwood has almost yields up to 25% resin, whereas the sapwood contains very less, just 2 to 3% resin, and as a result it is more beneficial to take or extract the resin from the heartwood as compared to your sapwood. Now this resin occurs as a very soft, glassy, brown rounded tears with very tiny 2 to 3 centimeter diameter and an acrid taste, and when warm you will get a little aromatic taste. Now how do you prepare this? Generally what is done is the gum is naturally present in the wood, but if you injure the plant you can get more of this resin secreted, and as a result more of the resin will flow. So generally before cutting the trees, the plant is wounded by tapping to yield more resin. Now because the more resin is prepared, then the plant is cut so that the heartwood is rich with resins, and in order to extract the resin from the heartwood, two things are done. Either the heartwood is heated. Now what happens on heating is the resin kind of melts and flows out, and this can be collected. Another option what is done is this wood chips are taken and boiled, especially in water containing salt, and what happens is because of the density of salt water, this resin starts floating on it. So this floating resin is then skimmed off and collected as your guaiacum resin. Now industrially, one more method is used is they take the heartwood and extract it with solvents. Even solvent, after extraction, when you evaporate the solvent, you get what is kind of called as crude guaiacum resin. Now this guaiacum resin contains numerous lignan derivatives. So far what we have seen is your resin contains oxidized terpene derivatives, but here you will see it also contains, in addition to your terpene derivatives, lignans. So you have what is called as guaretic acid, which makes up almost 10% of the guaiacum resin. If you cut it here, you get what is called as your guaiacol. So you have your guaretic acid, you have your guaiacol, and this guaiacol polymerizes with other compounds and forms guaiacol derivatives. You have your guaiol and cadonine, which are slightly volatile. Now if you see your guaiacum resin, it also contains another derivative which is important and used for diagnostic purpose, and that is your guaiconic acid, especially the alpha guaiconic acid, which gives you a numerous reactions with blood, and it gets oxidized to form a blue color compound. Now this guaiacum resin is soluble in alcohol, it's soluble in chloroform and also in alkalis. When I say your guaiconic acid, this guaiconic acid gives you a deep blue coloration, often referred to as your guaiac blue, when it is oxidized. So whenever you add metals such as ferric chloride, your guaiconic acid, especially alpha guaiconic acid, turns into a blue color derivative. Now this is something which can be used for detection of oxidizing compounds. So where do you apply this? So this oxidation, as you can see your guaiconic acid, it will undergo oxidation with the heme. So there are cases or disease conditions into which your intestine bleeds, and whenever you have your intestinal bleeding, this blood often accumulates in your stool. So you have what is called as fecal occult blood test. So you have to check whether blood is also coming out in your fecal matter. In that case, what is done is a filter paper test, wherein a paper is dipped in your guaicon resin or guaiaconic acid is used. So especially a guaicum coated filter paper is used. Now this filter paper is treated with the stool samples and you allow to see the reaction. We know that guaiconic acid gives you a bluish color complex, especially with metals such as iron. So in your blood, especially in your hemoglobin, you have iron in the heme region. So if there is blood present in the stools, so this iron will react with alpha guaiconic acid to give you a blue color complex, and this filter paper will detect the blood in your stools. In addition to that, your guaicum resin is registered as a food additive with E number E241, especially for its preservative effects, and E number E314 for its antioxidant effects. Now traditionally guaicum resin is used or still used in case or treatment of syphilis, but apart from that it is used in conditions such as your gout and rheumatism. It's also used in treatment of arthritis, asthma, tuberculosis and malaria. So here are a few more references if you wish to know more about this compound such as cannabis and guaicum, and thank you for your patient listening.